Marketing researchers have made their way into the human brain. Using MRI, they are able to determine what we want or desire even before we know what we want ourselves. This is either very exciting or very freaky, depending on the line of business you are in. But one thing is for sure, that it led to a breakthrough in predicting the outcomes of movie crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter. Please welcome Alexander Genevsky. Alexander, welcome. You're a former Stanford researcher, now at the Rotterdam School of Management. And first things first, are you a big movie fan?
I am. I think my preferences tend to the ends of the extreme of the dimension. I really like documentary films on one end and sort of thrillers and horror movies on the other. Now my 4-year-old daughter has gotten me sort of intimately knowledgeable about the Disney film canon as well.
Favorite horror movie of all times?
Probably Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay, great one. Yeah. We are going to talk brain imaging. You're a marketing researcher. Could you explain what you did? You did a research in Kickstarter, crowdfunding campaigns for movies. And you put people in an MRI scanner to see what actually happens in their brains. Could you elaborate on it?
Sure. So maybe a little background would be helpful. Most of the research in neuroscience and psychology, including my own, that has been involved with attempting to understand and predict individual decisions. So, for example, using your brain activity to try to predict your own choices, right? We show you 2 products, measure your activity while you're viewing both of them, and then we're able to predict which of the 2 you'll choose.
Either this pair of shoes or that one, or this brand of Coke, or
or the unhealthy food option versus the apple, for example. Now, that's been sort of well shown over and replicated in a number of studies. But what I and my collaborators got really excited about was this potential to use brain activity from a group of individuals to not just predict their own behavior, but the behavior at the population level, so aggregated up to the market level. So to do this, we brought participants into the laboratory, and we presented them with crowdfunding proposals for real documentary film projects that were recently listed on Kickstarter, and we measured their brain activity while they were considering these proposals and deciding whether or not they would actually like to fund these projects.
They were asking, are you willing to give your own money to it, or you gave them some money, or what?
That's right. On each project, they got to see an image and read some description, and then decide whether or not they would like to fund the project. If they were indeed funded, then they would receive whatever it is that project was offering in return, often a copy of the film, etc.
Yeah.
Now, immediately afterwards, we can analyze what brain activity predicted their own choices, right? What activity and what parts of the brain were associated with the films that they then decided to fund themselves, right? We found that activity in 2 regions of the brain, one that's associated with positive emotions and reward, and another that's often associated with decision-making process, integration of information. Both are predicting. So what did you see at that moment? You asked, are you willing to give money to this movie? Are you willing to support this movie? And something happened, an electric movement. What happens on that moment? Well, 2 things. Importantly, the activity that we're looking at isn't actually when they're making this decision, which is important. We're actually looking at activity just when they're viewing the proposal. Okay. So it's not about the decision, it's more about just their instinctual response, neural response to the film itself. And how would you describe this? Is this greed? Is this financially motivated? Is it desire? Is it love? Is it what? So I'll give you 2 answers. The first is what we're actually visualizing is a proxy for neural activity in the brain while they're viewing this. Now, how you're going to interpret that is always up for a little debate, but what is the general consensus is the area of the brain that we're focused on is associated with these very primal, positive, affective responses. So sort of a core approach mechanism. And this is a region of the brain that's very central, very deep in the brain, evolutionarily conserved from very primitive animals. So you could think of it as a basic fight or flight response, but this is an approach response. Okay. So it's something that would drive you toward. This is the part of the brain that's activated during all kinds of addictions. It's a very positive reinforcer. Something that when somebody brings in a beer or a pile of chocolate cookies, that it fires as well in my brain, or is it? Exactly. Okay. Okay. Right. So this is what you saw happening. Right. So what we saw is that if I'm trying to predict your own choices between these films, both of these areas give me some added information. But now, months later, the actual crowdfunding windows for these projects closes on the internet, and we can actually collect which of these films were funded and which weren't, and we can look at which information from our participants in the laboratory predicted that. And what I didn't mention previously is, of course, we also got ratings from them about how much they like these films, how successful they think these films will be, as well as their behavior, right? Which of the two films they chose. And what we find is what they can actually tell us. So everything that you can do by asking or observing these individuals was not at all predictive. You couldn't tell anything about which of these films was eventually going to get funded. But when we look at neural activity in that positive affective region of the brain, called the nucleus accumbens, we could significantly predict which of these funds would, which of these projects would eventually be funded.
This is the secret to an enormous wealth, right? Or if you know what the market is going to do, you are king of the world.
I mean, certainly that is a very overly ambitious interpretation, but certainly that is...
The only thing people have to do is bring them to you, put them in a brain scanner, and you know which product will conquer the market.
I mean, this is certainly the direction that we are going towards. Of course, in the experiment we're actually doing, we're really setting ourselves up in using an experimental design and the choice of a domain that give us the best chance to find what we wanted to. So this is a proof of concept. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we can use this method to predict all kinds of choices.
Okay, but let's focus on the industry of movie making. A lot of filmmakers, producers are here on IFFR. Are there any movie producers in the audience? Directors? They're all drunk by now, I guess. But there are a lot of there are cinemarts where they meet and they bring them get introduced to each other. New movie ideas are born. Would it be a good idea to bring one of your MRI machines to Cinemart, for example, and start using them?
Well, certainly suggests that for producers of films or really any kind of product, we're getting to a time where getting some sort of neural response when you're trying to choose between particular options of films to bring to market or different ways to market a particular film, that there certainly seems to be evidence that that can be useful in predicting which would be most successful.
Would it be possible, by the way, I said you bring the MRI machine to a gathering of movie professionals, but what does an MRI machine cost? Is it something you put in a van and drive to?
Unfortunately, not.
Okay.
That is one of the limitations of the method at this moment. And there are other neuroimaging methodologies like EEG, electroencephalography, that are more mobile.
This is I had Ale Smits as a guest in this show last year, and he had me put on a sort of bath. This is EEG, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now the
you are doing
is
something way more advanced, right? This is
well,
the old-fashioned.
Well, more advanced. It just gives you an ability to answer different types of questions. With EEG, you can get really excellent time resolution, so you can find out when in time different activations maybe happen. The fMRI is much better at giving you spatial resolution, so where in the brain you might find differences. And this is particularly important for the areas of the brain that I'm most interested in, and we find to be important in these decisions because there are these very base interior regions of the brain which are not as well imaged using EEG. Yeah.
You are saying this is a proof of concept. It's not ready to market as we speak. When will it be? When will will it take 10 years? Will it take 20 years? What will we be able to do with these technologies?
I mean, that's an excellent question.
Just bring us an utopian or a dystopian version of reality in 20 years.
Well, put it this way, I think everything that we've done can be done for a product. If a company did want to test two alternatives for a commercial, for a film, for two products that they want to bring to politicians, this can be done absolutely in the laboratory for not very much, actually. Now,
and just then again, you bring a group of 20, 30 people in the lab, and by looking at their brains, you are able to tell which of the alternatives will sometime later be favored not by these people, but by the population, by a country, in an election, for example.
And importantly, potentially better than the information that they're willing or able to report themselves.
Yeah, what you usually do in a poll or a survey or...
Or a focus group,
yeah,
the traditional
what
marketing
Maurice de Hond does in the Netherlands. You know Maurice de Hond?
No, I don't.
Okay, he does polls, election polls. So, okay.
Right.
So
and elections are another domain that we're looking into, slightly more complicated.
Yeah. I said depends on your line of business whether this is very freaky or very exciting. You are in the exciting part, I guess.
Yeah, but I think it's an important point to keep in mind, and people are certainly starting to think a lot more about the ethics. There's even a field developing of neuroethics, what is and is not okay to do. I think. With respect to what we're doing, no one would, I think, have a reasonable concern with us sort of gaining some information about films that are going to be more popular at the market level, or which cookies are people find more appealing. But when you start to talk about decisions that are either socially undesirable, or that,
for example,
well, people may have, let's say, racist opinions or tendencies that they keep to themselves, that could potentially be uncovered if you looked at brain activation while they were considering, let's say, dating partners of two different races. Now, when you start to talk about those kinds of questions, I think it becomes a gray area because these can be potentially damaging or embarrassing details to come out about a person.
Yeah.
And I think the thing for researchers in this area and the public to keep in mind is one to just always have these questions of ethics at the forefront as you're considering this and moving forward, and also holding, I think when you start to talk about industry and politics and sort of non-academic interests, that's where these, I think, start to become more problematic.
Yeah, and when could you give a concrete example? When does it go too far for you as a researcher? When would you say this is about as far as I'm willing to go with my brain research?
Well, I think one domain that has become a source of debate is using neuroimaging as a lie detector in the legal domain. There is academic evidence, empirical evidence, that it can be useful, but I don't think we know enough yet to use it in such a definitive way. The same way lie detectors of electrophysiological responses are also fallible.
Yeah.
But as we all know, there's a very seductive allure to neuroimaging experiments and the images, you put them up. People tend to believe these things. There's actually experiments showing that you give a horrible argument and you put a random image of a brain and people believe it. So I think, again, it's something we have to be very careful about.
Okay. Thanks for being here, and see you in about 10 years, and maybe the world has gone to shit thanks to your research. Maybe it has been better, and but thanks for discussing.
Take me to task then. Thanks very much.
Thanks for discussing it. Alexander Genevsky.